Hello and welcome back, and today we want to talk about comparing the old versus the new. I want to talk about comparing the QNAP TS453BE released around about 2 years ago and how it compares against the brand new QNAP TS453D. Now both of these NASes are great examples of what QNAP have been putting out there for desktop NAS users for a very long time. They present a huge amount of hardware potential, a huge amount of software that I will touch on during this video, but ultimately the release difference between them often will make a buyer consider, should I buy the brand new more expensive one, or should I go for the other one that's a bit cheaper that's on sale during Black Friday or Prime Day or something? And it's completely understandable. You might want to save a few quid. Indeed, the price difference between these two is somewhere between £70 to £100, depending on where you shop around, inclusive of tax, depending where you are in the world. So that is a large chunk of change for a 4-bay now. It's something that you might be able to plough into hard drives, into SSDs, into your network interface, and updating your network switches that surround you, maybe updating the PCIe slots on these NASes. What I'm saying is these two devices need to justify themselves for your data, and you need to know whichever one you're going to buy is going to be best for you for the next 3 to 5 years at least. So today we're going to talk about these two NASes. We're going to talk about what's the same and what's different, and ultimately help you decide which one best deserves your data. But a few things straight off the bat. I won't really be touching on software that much. I've already done more than 40 to 50 videos on QNAP software over the last couple of years, so if you do want to learn a bit more about their software, I strongly recommend you check out the software review of the 53D, which should already be live, as well as my multi-part guide series, or one of the many different applications such as QMAGI, Virtualization Station, Linux Station, Hybrid Mount, and more, all for QNAP. There are loads of different applications that they're putting out there right now, and I've made videos on most of them. The reason I'm not going to talk about software much is largely because the software is near enough identical on these two devices. But to help you, it's worth highlighting that the newer generation device will be able to perform all of those applications, bar maybe one better on the newer device. There's better memory, there's more memory, and the CPU and memory inside is indeed of a higher frequency. And the CPU has a better graphics handling, although there is one bump on the road with regards to H.265 encode decode, what we've talked about in other videos. Do check out my Plex and transcoding video on this. But for the most part, in terms of the software supported on both of these, the newer generation device ticks all of the boxes and will outperform the older one. The real question is, do you need it to go high? Because at a standard one user level, the user experience of these two devices is going to be largely the same. It's when you start introducing more applications and more active users at any simultaneous time that you're going to start to see a performance difference between them, and the newer generation device outperforming the old one. That's why I'm not really talking about software, because it's largely the same. They've both got 8 camera licenses, for example, in surveillance the surveillance station. The surveillance application QVR Pro, although surveillance station is inside this. And both of them have got those 8 camera licenses and support up to 40 plus cameras, nice and easy. But they're going to be running better on this device with faster and more memory by default. So let's talk about what's the same in terms of hardware. They're both hardware 4-bay devices for their RAID. That means that they support the very latest hard drive up to about 16 terabytes right now. They both arrive in very similar chassis, as you see here, very similar design, with charcoal grey here and a metallic blue on the older generation device. Both of them have got an Intel Celeron based processor inside, although the newer generation device has a newer gen CPU in the case of the J4125 versus the J3455, and I'm sure is already on screen there for you. On top of that, the memory, there is more memory at 4 gig than on the QNAP. They've both got memory, but DDR4 versus DDR3, and 4 gig versus 2 gig by default, although both of them can be upgraded to 8 gig maximum. Now, both of them have got USB 3 featured inside for localized backups and supported peripheral devices, but there are more USB 3 ports on the older generation device, something that still continues to surprise me. But the older generation device has USB 2 and USB 3 mixed, so USB 2 can be used for peripheral devices, but you can't really use them for storage or expansions, and it can be a bit annoying if you're going to have more and more expansions. They both support the USB 3 to 5 GBE network adapter upgrade that allows you to convert these into 5 GBE NASes. But again, you need USB 3 ports for that, and this has 2 and this has 5. So that may well be a decider for you. Now, if we turn these devices around, because the chassis are near enough identical, we can take a good look at the rear ports on these devices. Let's bring that there. See, as you can see there, very similar indeed. Now, the older generation device, let's bring that to the camera first. There is the remainder of those USB 3 ports there on the bottom of the unit. Alongside that, we have got two 1GBE ports. So again, around about 100 megabytes transmission through each of them, or you can link aggregate them for 2 GBE or 200 megabytes. You've got two HDMI ports there, which allow you to mirror or do one big shared screen, utilizing both of those in the HD Station application, as well as surveillance and standalone VM computer use. You have got audio in and out. You've got a speaker at the top, as well as speakers and microphone sockets, and a PCIe upgrade slot as well. Now, if we look at the newer generation device, it does look a little sparser, because we've got those USB 2 ports and the one USB 3 that we've talked about. We have got the LAN ports there, but these LAN ports are 2.5 GBE. So each one of those has 250 megabytes per second maximum, which you can link aggregate to get 5 GBE or 500 megabytes. So again, a huge jump up over the 1 to 200 on the older device. But you will need a supported switch to take advantage of that. Next, you've got an HDMI port there. So only the one on the newer generation device rather than the two on the older one. But this one is 4K 60 frames per second, otherwise known as HDMI 2.0. So if you want to watch 4K 60 frames per second top-end media, which you might want to do locally to have as low a latency as possible, then chances are this one will interest you more. There's none of the audio sockets, no audio in and out, no speakers, they're all gone here, but there is the PCIe slot. Now, one thing that's worth talking about is PCIe upgrades. The ability to upgrade your device in its lifespan is useful. You may wish to add more storage media, add more network ports, and more. There's lots of different cards available. With Wi-Fi 6 just around the corner, you better believe QNAP are going to work on a Wi-Fi 6 card, and there are even more network interface ports and card upgrades that you can run. The QM2 series from QNAP also allows you to use combo cards that allow you to install internal SSD bays for M2 SSDs onto a card inside that allow you to utilize it as raw storage or utilize it in conjunction with your hard drives with caching, both read-only, write-only and read-write caching for vastly improved internal speeds. You can get combo cards that have 10 GBE and those SSD bays built into them to give you the best of both worlds. But although all of what I've just said is supported by both devices suffer the same minor bottleneck, which is both of them arrive with PCIe Gen 2 times 2. That means you can only get about 1,000 megabytes per second transmission from that PCIe slot that the card is in to communicate with the system. So 10 GBE, once it's being utilized to the fullest capacity, is going to take up the majority of that bandwidth, which may present a problem for you. Now, both of these can be upgraded in a number of ways, both of which support exactly the same QM2 cards, but there's no avoiding that you may hit bottlenecks with the PCIe on either one of these. The difference is, if you're using a card that leverages both SSD and 10 GBE, when you're connecting to both of them, you're going to want speed. And if you're utilizing the newer generation device, it will be able to take advantage of the caching a lot more effectively and utilize 10 GBE more successfully, and therefore get your 10 GBE file transmissions over with quicker on the newer generation device because of the higher frequency CPU and better equipped efficient CPU, as well as that DDR4 memory. What I'm saying here is the newer generation device has got a higher glass ceiling. Both of them arrive with a number of ways in which you can upgrade the device in its lifespan, and the 453BE has certain quirky design choices that may, please some but not everyone, and that's why the D came along and streamlined and focused on the things people cared about the most. Is it perfect? No. That PCIe slot, a little bit annoying. The lack of USB 3s, a little bit more annoying, but in every other regard, and the things that matter the most to most users, the 53D just brings more to the party. Now, both of these devices are available now. The BE probably is going to go down in price when you shop around and things like deals online. And again, we're talking Black Friday, we're talking Prime Day, we're talking Christmas deals and such. So chances are you can still get hold of either one of these devices. But right now what you need to choose is which one of these two NASes is the one that you think deserves your data, because I've not even touched on things like warranty, where this newer generation device arrives with 3 years of manufacturer's warranty and the older generation device only arrives with 2. And that's another area in which the glass ceiling on the newer generation device is higher, and that's what's important when buying these. How long are they going to last? Yes, there's a price difference of between £70 and £100 if you shop around, but the point still remains that money isn't just frittered away. It actually went to something, and you are getting something for your money. It's not just the same unit but more expensive. But if you're not going to use all those bells and whistles, if you were barely pushing the previous generation NAS you had prior to this one, and you're only looking for a small step up, this is perfect for you. If you already own the 453BE and you're wondering about upgrading, maybe think about it, because they're quite similar nevertheless, and unless you can sell the old unit on and claim some of that money back, I think you're okay to sit on that for a little while longer and maybe look at a bigger fish down the line. But this has been the 453BE versus the 453D. Do let me know if you found this video helpful, or if you have questions moving forward. Go to the comments and let me know. Click like if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe to learn more about NAS, and go to the link in the description to see my comparison on these two over at NAS Compares. I will see you next time.